I remember the first speaker I knew, John McCormick, saying one time to us, if you come to the Capitol in the morning, rain or shine, winter or summer, and you see the Capitol, and you don't have a sense of elation, of the great honor you have in representing fellow citizens, if that feeling passes, McCormick said, quit. You stayed too long.
There was a time when Congress was not just a battleground for partisan politics, but a place where people with different beliefs could work out their differences and even find common goals.
It's a place where you see every background, every race, every religion. That's what the House of Representatives was supposed to be. It was supposed to be a place where you represented specific parts of our country, and that's the constitutional intention, and that's the political and national reality. And when it doesn't have that character, it will not be what it was designed to be. One of the things that I kind of believe in politics is that the issues are tough enough without getting personal about it, without getting harsh. And I think too often today the campaigns are run on negative issues rather than positive issues. And maybe it's too much to expect that that will change too fast. I think it's contributed to a kind of devaluation by the public of the whole process. When they listen to campaign ads, they kind of out negative the other side, and sometimes get very, very personal, attack not only the position, but the credibility and the character and so on of candidates. I've tried and I hope successfully avoided that. I think people, of course, have a different idea of what the right thing to do is, but they want the two parties to cooperate and not to just be at loggerheads all the time. Tip O'Neill once said about me, Tom Foley can see three sides of every issue. That was not meant to be a Tip O'Neill compliment, by the way. We did find ways to cooperate. On a number of defense issues, I caused some stir in the Democratic Party by supporting the positions that were taken by President Reagan. And after the president spoke to the country, I was asked by Tip O'Neill to give the response. And I think the expectation was that I was going to say it was a bad idea and we shouldn't do it. Instead, I said it was a good idea, and we disagreed with the president on a lot of things, but he's absolutely right on this issue, pledged the support of the Democratic Party. And my percentage points, somebody told me, in the district went up about 15 points overnight, because the public does want to see occasions when the parties don't bicker and don't argue and work together.
I believe the standard of public conduct is higher, and the performance of that standard is better in this House today than any other time in the history of our nation.
When I was Speaker, I used to encourage members, particularly Democrats that I was speaking to get to know Republican members. There's too much today of coming in on Tuesday and leaving on Thursday, and members don't really get acquainted across party lines. When I first came to Congress, we had members who wouldn't fly and who went home by train. So that meant that they stayed in Washington a lot longer and where some people might think that that's a bad idea, it really created an opportunity for people to get to know each other. In the old days, that is going back to the 60s and 70s, members used to cross party lines. They would live in the same neighborhoods, children would go to the same schools. They would wind up attending the same parties, and there was an acquaintance and often a friendship that made the political work in the Congress much easier and less bitter and hostile.
You know what the public doesn't see is the groundwork that helps produce that.
Yeah, that's true.
The meetings you had with both Democratic and Republican leaders of the Senate, sometimes over there, sometimes in your office. I mean, there's a lot of groundwork you seem to put in to make these things come across.
Yeah. Sometimes I think there's too harsh a message delivered when people give these one-minute speeches at the beginning of the day and sort of on the attack mode. But it kind of gives the impression of the two parties at loggerheads, and to a degree it's increasingly, unfortunately, a real impression. But there's also the behind-the-scenes efforts of the party leadership to work together. And particularly when I was Speaker, I had the great pleasure and honor of having Bob Michael, who was the Republican leader and I think one of the really extraordinary members of Congress in my experience. I thought he was a very effective leader, but he was also one who always kind of put the interest of the country first.
When Tom became Speaker, he suggested that we get together once a week, talk over the affairs of the House, something that had never been done before. While we disagreed over policy and jousted with each other politically, the meetings were highly productive because underlying them was the faith and trust we had in each other. That isn't just good manners, it's good politics. Tom knew that a House member has three essential jobs: to deliberate, to debate, and to be effective. He knew that if we wanted to be effective in the House, you just can't go around shouting your principles. You have to subject those principles to the test of open debate against those who do not share those principles.
And I used to think that if I didn't vote sometime during the session on something which was going to get me some difficulty or problem politically, I wasn't doing the job. If everything is agreeable, if you never have a tough vote, then you have to really ask yourself, are you taking a really hard look at this? Because it's unlikely that a member of Congress will go through a whole session and everything is easy and everything is fine and it's all comfortable and you're never called on to make a tough call or take a risk.
When tragedy struck at the Fairchild Air Force Base Hospital in his district, this long-time defender of gun rights saw the need for sensible gun violence prevention laws, knowing that it would not be well received in his district. But he did what he believed, and he did it with courage.
I remember people being very surprised, coming from where he came from, that he went out and helped to get an assault weapons ban passed, because politically it was really challenging for him.
When we succeeded in putting the assault weapons ban back into the crime bill, he said, "You can leave this in here, but there will be a lot of blood on the floor if we pass this. Many of us will not survive." And I thought he was wrong, but he was right. And he lost that election by 4,000 votes. But he knew that even when the spirit of bipartisanship and compromise, being in public service and making difficult decisions was inevitable and not free. And he paid the price.
Tom was a collaborator. I think he earned the positions that he got with the U.S. House of Representatives on the basis of a good guy and a smart leader.
Smart, capable, although he looked like a tough old dog, he was underneath a teddy bear.
He stood for the principles of diplomacy and mutual respect, even toward his opposition.
He didn't look at the negative in people, he looked in the positive, and he was always encouraging people to find the positive.
Tom always lived by the two rules as to personal comportment. Number one is don't get personal, don't engage in demonization of people with whom you disagree. And number two, always look for common ground.
Tom had this great intellect. He was a statesman, and he also was a great storyteller. When he started telling a story, you knew that it was going to be a little bit of the behind-the-scenes humor that happens in the day-to-day. If you can see the humor in the situation and get people to laugh together, maybe you can take a breath and now look at the same problem a little differently.
Foley was just completely honorable and fair and worked with both sides of the aisle. He was just a person that everybody liked, and even the Republicans liked him.
He's a man of integrity, decency. Okay, he's a Democrat, but he's a man I am very proud and honored to work with.
It was his sense of fairness that will always stand out for me.
He believed that the Speaker was the Speaker for the whole House, and he lived that to his very core.
Politics has issues that shouldn't be glossed over. They are important issues. And some ability to see both sides of an issue, I think, is important because on most of the issues, there are two sides. We have to find a way to talk about them and to differ about them without creating a culture of not only a personal attack, but of kind of not able to understand at all, how somebody can take a different position. There are considerations that justify these different positions, and people who hold them aren't either virtuous on one side and evil on the other.
At a time when our political system can seem more polarized and more divided than ever before, it can be tempting to see the possibility of bipartisan progress as a thing of the past. It can be tempting to wonder if we still have room for leaders like Tom, whether the environment somehow preclude the possibility of that brand of leadership. Well, I believe we have to find our way back there.
Tom Foley served for 30 years in Congress, half of them in leadership. The last 5 as Speaker. In the end, his commitment to doing the right thing cost him. Tom's willingness to place the needs of the country ahead of his own political agenda provides a shining example of not just what the Congress used to be, but what it can be again.
We all know that government had a decisive role in education, but I think we sometimes forget that education ultimately has the decisive role in government. For in the end, it determines more than anything else whether we will have citizens and leaders of honor, judgment, wisdom, and heart. With your support, those are the qualities which this institute will nurture and advance, helping this nation become what it has always been destined to be, the best hope of a free people to live together in an open, prosperous, and just society.